Thank you, Graham. I just hope to God it's not mine, and that has happened in a conference before. It was very embarrassing. Our first speaker this afternoon is Sherry Coutu, who's the chair of SVCT UK. And Sherry wants to talk about the importance, not just of starting up, but of scaling up. The analogy we were talking about earlier is the difference between, getting somebody born into this world and actually getting them to adulthood. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Sherry.
Thank you. And SVCT UK stands for Silicon Valley Comes to the UK, but it's more about being a state of mind, and I'm a Canadian, so I really shouldn't be talking about Silicon Valley anyway. So growing a global company, we've got the capacity here to create phenomenal companies, and often people are saying, why haven't we created the next Google or whatever? Well, there's no reason why not, and there may be a few barriers, but they're not ones that are not easily overcome. So background, there's a Canadian flag up there, so the accent is Canadian, because I'm very sensitive about being Canadian. As I know, our own nationalities are always important, as you have reviewed recently here. And the background is I've done a bunch of things. I started out in a lumber town in Canada. My mother is a civil servant, and my father was a telephone engineer, had not gone to and a union leader. They didn't go to university, and you never would have thought that 35 years later I would have invested in 55 companies that would be turning over $3.5 billion and employing 20,000 people in 70 countries. But that's what happened. And a number of the companies you might not have heard of, because some of the things that I've been involved in the past didn't work out quite the way that I would have hoped and imagined. But I think I might have learned more from those that didn't become global names than those who have become global names. And I think it's important that we think about the dynamism in our environment, which I'll talk a little bit about later. So current affiliations, the companies that I'm doing stuff with at the moment, looks sort of like a hodgepodge mess on a page. There's some things that I do for profit, and London Stock Exchange I love marketplaces, and all of the companies that I've made investments with are kind of marketplaces and platforms. And when I was asked to join the London Stock Exchange, I thought, that's a really, really big marketplace, 23 different markets, thousands, hundreds of thousands, trillions of transactions. So I couldn't resist it. So even though I didn't start it up or wasn't its angel investor, I thought I would go have a bit of fun with it. And particularly as I'm also on the advisory board of LinkedIn and Care.com, both of which floated on the New York Stock Exchange in the last couple of years. You might, well, how could you join that when you obviously don't think it's very good? Well, actually, I do think it's really good. And I also think that in the future, it won't be too long before the companies that are big and have grown big in America, I think, consider floating here, because this area, for its talent and for its geographic location, is the best place in the world to scale a company from. I do a lot of stuff. I live in Cambridge, and you'll see that a little bit later as well. And the one thing that I'm having quite a lot of fun with at Cambridge is sit on their Financial Strategy Council, and our project is to think about, in 50 years' time, what are the things that we need to be doing today to make sure that this university is still, in the top of the pops of the league tables. And it's very different thinking along a 50-year time frame than a one-year time frame, or can I hit my payroll time frame? And that's flavored the way that I think about quite a few things, which we might talk about later when we come to talk about financing. And I'm going to use case studies a little bit later on some of those other. Giving back, I think one of the things that I think is really important is not waiting until you're dead to give people, money or things or your time. I think every day we're a member of a community, and we can do things to enrich our lives. And some of the stuff that I'm doing is University of Cambridge Raspberry Pi, which has just sold its 4 millionth unit. It's the fastest company that's ever come out of Cambridge, even faster than ARM in terms of growing. Its little $25 computer is 1 million times more powerful than the BBC Micro that came out, 30 years ago. And it's this small, it costs a tiny amount, and it's just amazing me what technology allows us to do. Silicon Valley Comes to the UK. Started it up in 2006 with Reid Hoffman, who he'd done his PhD here in philosophy, and then he'd started up PayPal and LinkedIn, and I'd come here to do a one-year top master's at London School of Economics, and we had started up companies that were global in nature and had scaled, and we thought there were some things that all of us could do together as a community to ensure that the first $1 trillion company comes out of this part of the world, which I hope we're able to do. And I'll talk about Founders for Schools a little bit later, because I think role models are vitally important, which is one of the reasons why I was really excited to be here earlier today with the school kids, because it's them that they're the ones that are gonna help us. And I know that we often talk about startups, which again, it's like great, you can have a baby, but actually let's think about creating an adult and thinking about our ecosystem that creates companies that flourish. And one of the messages that come from, it's a little bit messy, that slide, that it's the first mover advantage isn't the person who has the idea. The person who has the idea is really, really important, but it's actually the execution of that idea over a number of years that creates the economic value and the economic growth of an economy. And if we want to be the economy that goes up in importance and stands proudly alongside the Chinas and the Indias, then we're going to have to get a few more home runs, which means plodding away year after year in the way that you guys have, and keeping on going and not giving up. There's a huge skills gap. Actually, it's more than a gap. I think it's a complete crisis. And I've got some stats both from the UK and from the US. We're going to start off with the US and mix some European ones. There are 4 million open jobs right now in the US. And those companies are saying that they cannot accept customer orders because they cannot hire people who have the skills that they need to fill those customer orders. Well, that's a bit of a travesty, particularly when you think about the number of unemployed, the youth unemployment rate that is ravaged across our world. And this crisis is holding back our economic growth. This statistic here on the left is from the Royal Society, which took 3 years to produce a report about how many engineers and science, technology, engineering, and mathematics graduates would be required in the next by 2020, and there's 1 million that are needed. There are very few. There's a mismatch an enormous mismatch in the amount of people that are coming out of our school system right now. On the apps, and I said earlier, how many kids in the audience are using apps, and how many of us use apps? Actually, how many here use apps on a daily basis? Yeah. So it won't surprise you that right now there are 1.8 million people across Europe that are in the app economy. So for their living, they create apps. It may surprise you that by 2018, the OECD is forecasting that number will be 5.8 million. Wouldn't it be great if all of those jobs were filled here in Scotland? But we need to have people to understand that the apps that they use every day are created by people like them and by people who are in our schools right now. But if we don't do something about it, then those jobs which are being created will be filled, but they might not be filled in Scotland, they might not be filled in Cambridge, they might be filled elsewhere, and that's not so great. People talk about SMEs. I really hate the word SME. It actually makes me angry because it doesn't reflect the dynamism of our economy. So what is a SME? A small or a medium or a sort of enterprise? But actually that means you're suggesting that they always stay small or medium. And what's far more important in the dynamism of our economy is that some are growing, some are shrinking. This here talks about the 100% of the net new jobs that were created across Europe came from companies that were less than 5 years old. That's a phenomenal statistic. And if you talk about a large company, then you may not know that it's shrinking really quickly. And why is it shrinking very quickly? Well, maybe it doesn't have innovative products. The good thing for everybody in the room, who I understand most are entrepreneurs, is that you're eating their lunch, so that's a good thing. But you're creating the jobs that that the kids who were here earlier will fill. In the UK, I know from Adzuna, and also LinkedIn, that there are just shy of 1 million open jobs today in the UK. And they are not able to accept customer orders because they're not able to hire people into those positions. That's a bit of an issue, and it stops us from scaling up. So all the skills gap aside, I wanted to talk a little bit about when you're building a global company, the things that you need to do. So for the last few years, we have surveyed CEOs and senior leadership teams of companies that have scaled up to more than $1 billion in turnover. And this is some of the things that they say must be done. Oh, and the average age, actually there's some other little stats. I like numbers, can you tell that? The stats is that 40% of, 40% of the GDP comes from companies that didn't exist 15 years ago. Also, that's the average age of the founders of the fastest 500 growing companies in the US. 40, so you don't have to be a teenager, that's really good news. But it's 40, and then 6%, we know that there's the vital 6%, they drive most of the jobs, it's a lot of jobs, it's very fast moving. I like this statistic because people say, oh, the technology, it's ruining everything, it's taking jobs away from people. Well, actually, the statistics don't bear that out, and it shows that there are 2.6 jobs created for every job lost. The other thing that I kind of like about this is the job that's lost doesn't have to be a job that's lost in the UK if we're filling the skills gap. Somebody else has a skills gap issue, then that's their job that's losing, because we actually operate in a global economy, not one that's just that. E-commerce, a lot of the companies that I've been involved with are e-commerce companies, and there's a lot of money in e-commerce. And sometimes these companies don't have a voice, but actually they're growing and they're larger than a lot of other industries that you hear a lot more about in the media. So I think there's also a responsibility for people in the media to draw attention to the dynamism in our economy. And please don't use the word SME again. I'd be very grateful, anybody who's in the media. So the first company that I started was called ISI Emerging Markets, and we used technology in a way that lowered our cost of gathering the information together. It was a traditional industry, and this was in 1993, so we didn't choose to charge any different than our competitors did, but our cost base was 1/80th of our competitors, so it was a highly profitable company and quite fun. The second company that I started up was called Interactive Investor, and it used technology in the same sort of way, but instead of charging the same as our competitors, we decided to be a little bit cheeky and not charge for the services. So we flopped the business model entirely and went from charging on a subscription basis to saying, actually, I think everybody should have this information, and that's what we're going to do. And we went to an advertising and an advertising-based model and a transaction-based model, and that wasn't how the industry was even vaguely organized at the time. And it grew very fast, and it floated on both NASDAQ and the London Stock Exchanges. Main market. And I was 5 months pregnant with my second child when we floated, which was a little bit inconvenient, the roadshow. I wouldn't recommend it to any of you floating, especially in 2 countries at the same time when you're 5 months pregnant. Care.com, I really like Care.com. It was something that I've been an advisor to for quite a while, and it was set up as a marketplace that served sandwich mums. Now you think, what is a sandwich mum? A mum who serves a sandwich. Well, what mum isn't a sandwich mum? But a sandwich mum, in American speak, is a woman who at the same time has children and is also taking care of ailing parents. So every day, in addition to working, you're also trying to figure out how to do whatever it is with your family, and also your mother has dementia, and you need to make sure that the carer picks her up and that her doctor, she sees the doctor, and that all of these other things are going on. And it created a marketplace to serve busy working mums, and the woman who founded this company really found a niche, and it's grown enormously by putting together a very disjointed cottage industry that we're serving communities everywhere and making it more efficient, almost doing a TripAdvisor. It's like, well, do you want to know the person who's really good at dementia care for 80-year-old women? Well, it's that one. And so bringing together and raising to the surface using data, critical information that historically we used to get in our communities by speaking, but this way sort of raising it and making it more powerful for everybody and a lot cheaper for everybody as well. And LinkedIn, which again just recently went more than 320 million, I joined them when they had 10 million. They're still taking on more than 2 new users per second, and they're really thinking about the economic graph and how people need tools that will enable them to be far more productive. We took a I led a trade mission of CEOs to the US last week, and we spent a day, or part of a day at LinkedIn, and they were going through the tools that small businesses were using to enhance their productivity. And it kind of blew my mind, and I should know about those because I've been on the, but again, they've got, probably, I think 1,500 just engineers of the 2,500 staff, and they are working on every single day making that product better, and they're focusing on the growing business market as opposed to the SME market. And they've got a phenomenal tool. So that's quite a fun one. The other thing is that they've trying to cater to the global market rather than a local market. And I think one of the things that these tools help you serve a global market rather than just your local market, which is easier to get to and more familiar with us. So if I think about the lessons that I've learned from the companies that I ran and the companies that I'm now involved with, and the survey that we did of the CEOs that had made it, gotten a full grown-up adult, using our earlier analogy, the one is do yourself a favor and choose a big enough problem. Sometimes, you can be so niche in the thing you're passionate about, but if you want to grow a really global, big business, choose a big problem that everybody can get excited about, and that ideally, particularly if you're in a small country like, Scotland or England or Wales or France, without that large a population, one that if you figure it out and pilot in one country, you can rapidly grow it out and roll it across a bunch of other countries. And for me, that's the number one lesson. Sometimes I get these fabulous ideas, and you know that they're great and they're a wonderful problem to solve, but that one person could also solve a much bigger problem if they could get excited about it and get a team going. The other, which is really critical, is embed yourself in the right network. And growing companies isn't easy. And you need to surround yourself with people who have solved the problems for other companies before. And sometimes you look at two different people and they look exactly the same. But there's some research that's shown, I think it's from Kaufman Foundation, that showed that a person who has worked at a company that's grown from, say, 100 employees to 1,000 employees over a 10-year period, if you look at their productivity and the problems that they can help you solve, and you compare that to a person who over a 10-year period has worked for maybe 5 companies that have grown from 1 to 50 people or from 25 to 75 people, the productivity differences and how far you can get with the two people, something like 20 times further if you choose someone and you can find someone who has been on that path before. Now, there's not that many of them, but there's quite a few. And with the modern technology, it's actually really pretty easy to find them. Earlier today, there was a gentleman here who had a really great sounding idea that I think will go very far. And he said, how do I find these people? I'm in Leeds. It's like, well, use these free services that will show you within 10-mile radius all of the people who have done what you're about to do. So you can do that. It didn't used to be possible, but it is now possible, so use the resources that there are. So same thing, recruit people. So surround yourself, but also recruit people who have done it before. Hire for tomorrow. If you think you've got a fabulous company, then don't be shy about taking someone from a large company. Because the nice thing about they might not be having fun at the large company where they are. That company might be shrinking. It might not have that innovative a product. And you can save them from a really moribund, not that exciting existence. And they can come and help you do something really exciting and worthwhile. So you often, I found, you give people a new lease on life when you rescue them from larger companies that they might not be having that much fun at. And they can come to your company and have a lot of fun and change the world. Embrace diversity. I would say that I'm a woman standing here, but I really think it makes an enormous difference. And I don't just mean gender diversity or racial diversity. I actually mean diversity of thought, almost in the Socratic method. So I'm okay with numbers. I think lots of people are way more okay with people. I tend to scare some people, which I'm really sorry, but I do. So I always make sure that there are people on the team who can, who are better, gentler people, perhaps less intense. And I'm a stupid optimist. I see everything the glass half full, or if not entirely full. And I also make sure that there are people on my teams who are complete doubting Thomases and absolute cynics and who think the glass is not only half empty but bone dry. And that on a team is really, really helpful. And you don't want to have a whole bunch of optimists. You need to have a team that helps you do things. The nurturing company values, I think, as a company, you make your mark, and as a founder, you make your mark, and you've set out to solve a problem that you believe passionately in. And once it's growing, you shouldn't let it go away. And I think we need, LinkedIn, Care.com, all of the companies being very mindful about who it is that you hire onto the staff and make sure that you as a leader spend time helping them understand the culture and what you're trying to do. Because it's really quite sad if you, as it grows bigger, that you get separated from the company that you created. And I think that's really sad. And when you talk to people, it's like it's not necessary to allow that to happen. And it's important. Build systems that scale. There's this one company that I made an investment in and found out that they had 23 different contracts for their customers for the same product because they thought, well, we just want to be flexible. But actually, 23 contracts mean you can't actually scale. And they just thought, well, we wanted to be a small company. We thought it was important to be bespoke. But actually, that stopped them from scaling. And they had to undo 23 sorts of contracts when it came a time to change the terms and conditions. So think big and think also allowing yourself to scale. Create a platform, and then think about what else can you do from that platform rather than creating a platform for that, a platform for that, a platform for that, and then trying to sew them together. Think big, think what's easy, what's simple to grow. You look at Google, they've got a single place to start, and that's very focused for users' minds, and they know what they need to do when they get to that place. Test product market fit. I love what technology allows us to do. At LinkedIn, we're doing A/B testing and releases of product 5 times a day. And we're able to do that using the technology. Before, you had to do like big surveys, and you had to get people with markers and ask people stuff. Now you can just read the behavior using the technologies that there are, and you can get your product market fit way faster than ever before, and a more accurate picture on that. The thing that I like about scaling is you see some companies, they go along slowly for quite a while, and it's not just the young ones, but then they get the product market fit, they've got it. Suddenly, something worked, and they've got it, and they start to fly. It's once they've started to fly that you want to start moving into different geographic markets. Other companies, you'll see them testing 20 things in 20 different markets, and those are the ones that sort of crash and burn. Get it right somewhere, and then figure out where else it's needed, and move rapidly into those markets, and that it helps you grow a global company. And the right type of money at the right time. There are some angels, there's crowdfunding, there's VC. Somebody said the other day that they were really pleased because the venture capital, they'd made a recommendation, the venture capital industry were given the right to issue visas for their portfolio companies or something like that. And I said, well, that sounds really great, but what about the 99% of companies that don't choose to be venture capital backed? What's their option? It doesn't solve the problem for 99% of the market. If the skills gap is severe as we know it is, then you've got to have a solution for more than just 1% of the market. So, of the 500 fastest growing businesses in Europe, only 1% are venture backed. So that leaves crowdfunding, which is pretty interesting. These angel, I'm an angel, so I think angels are great. Angels started off my business and helped it go right through to not only flotation, to the subsequent acquisition after the flotation. And that's an important thing. I think that role models are critically important. They were for me. They made me think that I might actually want to start up a company. They made me change from an economics degree into a programmer when I was 23. And they have a profound impact. And I think that you all are business people here and leaders, and you need to get into the schools and provide role models so they can see why business is great. This is just statistics from 3 years, and this is from a panel, not a panel, 4 speakers talking for 10 minutes about their journey from high school to when they ran their business. After one hour session, you can see the difference. 87% of students just said that they wanted to get involved in business against the national average of 60%. And this, I think, is even more interesting, particularly given how acute the STEM skills gap is. The national average of kids that are interested in STEM, 18%. After just one hour free session, it goes up to 54%. If we can get these results just by combining business with what's going on in the schools, then that's pretty amazing. Some people say, well, business people are too busy to go into the schools, or teachers often think that business people are too busy, or maybe too mean, or they just don't know how to get to them to go into schools. But what we found with our 7,500 founders that have volunteered to go into schools is that within 72 hours of a teacher asking, they have 4 speakers who have agreed to go into the school at the time that they asked to go into. So it's not, there is a market to make there between the role models and the teachers who are teaching the kids. Sadly, at the moment, they seem to be sometimes teaching the kids to preparing them for jobs that were rather than are, and they really need to be thinking about preparing them for the jobs that will be, such as the jobs that you're creating every day. Going into returns. A little bit of a hit at sort of venture capitalists again. So angel investments, you look at the average returns and where, again, right money at the right time. This just talks about you could put your money into a variety of instruments, and some of them angel investments. If you're an angel and you're investing, it's actually got a pretty good return. And this is the average. It's not even anything else. So I'm an angel, and the median angel is 5. I've been doing it for 15 years because I chose to be an angel investor rather than be a CEO after I floated the company. And I did that because I decided to sell my company the day I found out I was pregnant with my 3rd child, and thought being an angel is actually really quite a flexible career. And it was one that I chose to pursue. Ventures founded, the average ventures founded of the average angel, it's usually people who have founded ventures before that choose to be angels. Years of age, 53, so I'm younger than most. Years with a large company, 13. I haven't spent hardly any time with a large company. I haven't really gotten that excited about them, but average angels are that. And 93% of angels at the moment are men, but women just haven't figured out that it's a really flexible, fabulous lifestyle. So if you're thinking about being an angel, you should consider it. Some people talk about you'll lose your shirt if you're an angel, and that's not really true. It's not borne out by the facts. And again, the average is 22%. If you look at what makes you lose your shirt and what makes you keep your shirt on and be able to buy lots more shirts, it's actually the due diligence on the companies that you guys are creating. And that may sound a little bit strange. I think that person's asking a lot of annoying questions. Well, if that person has founded a bunch of companies and really knows the industry, maybe you should think about the questions that they're asking you. The average angel spends something like 40, the average angel that makes 5 to 10x is asking more than 20 hours of due diligence on thinking about whether or not they should invest in your company. When I started out as an angel investor, I started investing in things that I just wanted to know about because I was curious and I felt like my mind had been bogged down in financial services for a long time. And so I invested in lots of things that were way outside of sectors, and that was good, but you make more money if you invest in things that you understand. So what now I do is I'm usually marketplaces, but in other industries. So LinkedIn is a marketplace between people who have skills, people who want skills. Love Film, which we talked about earlier, is a company, they have films and people who want films. Zoopla, which is a company that I've also on the board of, and gave them their first angel check, is a company that has houses and people who want houses. All of those are marketplaces, but they're different industry sectors, but they're all marketplaces. So I try to stick to what I know. And sometimes people come in and say, I heard you didn't invest in DeepMind. Why didn't you do that? It's like, it's totally search and it's not a marketplace. I wouldn't have a clue what to do with it. Though I like the entrepreneur very much, but I wouldn't be able to help it. And I did speak to them and I said, well, I'm not the person to invest in your company because I'm not built to help you understand the things that you need to understand. And they found some very good people, and they did very well, so that's good. Whether or not you should be on the board or not on the board, I think it's important to be somewhat involved as an angel investor because that will allow you to be close enough to help them figure out how to avoid the problems that they're going to run into. Cambridge is an advertisement for Cambridge. It's not really an advertisement for Cambridge, but I just want to talk about, I have deep data on Cambridge and I'm a data girl. So there are lots of companies, they're employing on average about 50,000 people. We know from LinkedIn that the real number is about 85,000 when you extend it to the families. A good turnover, the fastest growing companies are hiring really fast, on average 17% revenue growth, 24% employee growth. We've got one company that has more than $1 billion in turnover. we've got 15 companies that have north of 100 million, which again, you guys are just going north of 100 million this year, I think. So we've got 15. And we're tracking and worrying about scaling up. So I haven't talked about startups on here. We're not worried about the startups. We're worried about getting more into the 100 million category, the 50 million category, the 25 to 50 million category, and the 10 to 25 million category. And I think that in a couple of years' time, all of our ecosystems, so be it Scotland or Cambridge or Oxford or London or Leeds or Manchester, will be tracking and thinking really hard about what we as a community can do to make sure that you blast through the 100 million in turnover. And I'm not talking valuation. This is real customers putting in real orders for real products. I sometimes get annoyed when people talk about valuations. These are real customer orders, real people working for these companies. And also, and I don't know, we launched an app-a-thon recently, and if you in the audience have children, I hope that your children are going to participate in the app-a-thon. And the app-a-thon is a competition where they talk about, on a video for 90 seconds, an app that they want to use, not that somebody else has created, but that they would like to create with somebody else. And then we run it off with the universities, and the university students will work with the secondary and primary school students to create the app. And the prize is going to California for a week, all expenses paid, and spending a day at LinkedIn, a day at Google, a day at Facebook. And we can probably try to throw in a few other places to visit as well. Also tours of the BBC, and there's local communities everywhere gathering together. So if you're a parent and it's not happening at your school, do it at your kitchen table or your garage. And if you're running a company and you're not yet hosting an app-a-thon for local kids' schools, because sometimes teachers feel a little bit nervous about encouraging people to create videos, you can do it and you can make a change. So I'd encourage you to think about that. And this is my favorite quote, which is the person who says it cannot be done, just stop interrupting those people who are doing it. Because I think that the businesses that you guys are running and starting up and will continue to run and start up, lots of people say it's impossible. People told me when I was starting up my companies, it's totally impossible. And they were wrong. And that's a good thing. And it's nice to think that you can start something up and work with people that you love to do something that matters. That's it. Thank you.